Here are 15 tips on writing your own tunes, whether you're writing pop music, film music, electronic music. Obviously, there are no rules to this, and we've invited lots of different musicians to give their different perspectives on how they come up with ideas. What is a melody? For the sake of this video, I'm going to say a melody is something like the verse of a song. And a phrase is pretty much what you can sing in one breath, which is often 4 bars long. I'm not going to use the word theme, but I am going to use the word motif, which is going to be a little bite-sized chunk, could be as short as 2, 3, or 4 notes, like da-da-da-dum. That could be a motif. So, that's our terms defined. Let's get going with the first tip. I think it's a myth that writing tunes is really difficult. If you're alert, you'll start to find them everywhere, even if you're not trying to make them up.
For me, they are like butterflies. You're given these ideas and you've got to catch them. And they're given to you. And if you don't, they can happen in the middle of the night, you can wake up. You've got to find, otherwise you'll lose it.
And it has surprised me sometimes when I've realised that something that has grown into something kind of maybe orchestral has started as a 3-note, almost it could be a nursery rhyme or something like that, and you can just go round and round, and actually it doesn't really necessarily get boring repeating it.
So in another video, we asked my colleague Olivia, who claims to be tone deaf, to just muck around and plonk away on different notes on the piano. It only took a minute. She came up with a tune that I thought was great. And in that other video, I made dozens of pieces of music just using her tune. My main point is, don't get spooked by the idea of writing tunes. Just throw some ideas out.
Certainly with a film score that I've just written, the main theme for the main character is 3 notes, and it's just a motif that goes din, 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 din. When I first wrote it, I was like, we can't use that. Like, that's like way too simplistic, and I'm meant to be a composer. And then actually what happened is that I started writing around it, and then all the colours and everything, the character of the music, it then sort of revealed itself. And then that motif, because it was so simple, it gave room for it to then do lots and lots of other things.
A lot of the ideas I write down are just binned, basically. And then I come back to it and realise, oh, there's lots of potential with this bit. Or maybe I'll combine the phrase that I thought was terrible and the phrase that I thought was really good and suddenly make something fantastic, you know.
It's quite stressful being a composer, but this idea of a good idea, I'm more interested in how I make something work and the journey I go on.
Number 2, you can find melodies in the strangest places. You might find that your bass line, which you weren't even really concentrating on, you think, actually, that would be a brilliant idea for a tune. It could be that you take a few notes of someone else's tune and you completely transform them so they're unrecognisable. That's what David Bowie did with his song Starman, which is actually the first 3 notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, if you listen to that. Or it could be a sound that inspires you, something that you hear out in the world. There's a track by the experimental rock musician Captain Beefheart. He did a song called Bat Chain Puller, which is actually entirely based on the sound of his windscreen wiper of his tour bus. All the composers that we've spoken to have got stories about this.
One piece I wrote called Alamadi, I got the groove from actually being on a train, because I thought, oh, this train is kind of making a really strange rhythm. And so I wrote it down, and yeah, the piece kind of came from that little thing that I heard.
Here's another way of finding a melody rather than inventing one. Let's make up a tune which I'm not going to be too precious about. In fact, I'm going to try to not do any thinking at all in the process. So we're going to need some notes, and we're going to need a rhythm for those notes. So how about taking the rhythm from a drum part? Good idea. So that's the rhythm, but what about the pitches of the notes? Well, I'm going to roll a dice to decide these notes. I need 6 notes because that's the number of sides on a dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes. Great. Let's roll the dice. So let's see what I get first. Okay, so I've thrown a 1. That means I need to put a C there for that first note. Okay, here we go. Next, 3. That's going to be E flat. So remember, what I'm trying to do here is find a tune. I'm not making up a tune. So there it is. Let's see what it sounds like. Yeah, not bad. I think it's not a classic, but I'm sure we can do something with that. And we're going to be using this tune a lot through the course of this video.
I really like to try and write tunes where the melody is singable, but also it's just the best way for me to come up with them, really. Even if I'm in an awkward, just walking down the street, I'll sort of bring my phone up and sing into that. Being able to just sing something and then just constantly go round and round singing it and hearing the rest of the instruments in your head and then transferring it to wherever is comfortable to write it, it's the best thing. And sometimes it will be improvising on the saxophone and recording that and seeing what I come up with and then transcribing that.
I think I can work out melodies in my head, but I don't know whether they're good or not until I've sung them out loud. I have several dreams about writing the most amazing song ever, but when I wake up, I maybe sing the melody that I think it was out loud, and it's really terrible.
I usually write melody improvising from my trumpet. I'll probably move to piano or the other way around, but the melody writing is usually either on my trumpet or the piano.
That moment of inspiration, that place, it's so going to places that inspire you, being in a place, an environment, I think that's really important. And that for me is not a time with the computer. That's a time with your instrument. That's a time with your drum machine, your looping pedals, your keyboards. That's time when you dream it up.
4. A little idea can be a classic.
I love economy. I really like doing a lot with very little. It feels good to me to do that.
Even a really humble, tiny little tune could be worked up into something that's completely brilliant. Take the chorus of Happy by Pharrell. Nothing particularly clever about those note choices. The riff in Single Ladies by Beyonce, that's just an arpeggio. Nothing particularly clever about that, but they've been worked up into these monster hits.
I actually sometimes play a game of trying to come up with a really bad idea. And the truth is, in music, it's not even the material, it's what you do with the material throughout the piece. It's always I think composing is about using imagination, being inventive and making the most of little.
I really believe that you can write material which is just as good as Pharrell's Happy or Beyonce's Single Ladies. It's how you craft that material that is going to make the difference. 5. Start on an offbeat. Here's an observation. Most tunes don't actually start on the first beat of a bar. I've looked at a lot of student pieces who are writing stuff for exams, and often, especially the weaker pieces, they start on the first beat of the bar. The tune starts on the 1. Now, of course, you can write a brilliant tune which starts on the first beat of the bar. There's tons of them. You know, Wuthering Heights, Yesterday, the chorus of Chandelier by Sia, or Anti-Up by M.I.A. and Busta Rhymes, one of my favourites. They all start on the first beat of the bar, and they're brilliant. I looked at the charts a few months ago, the top 20, and 20% of the songs started on the first beat of the bar. So it might be something that you want to think about if your tune is sounding pedestrian. If you just take the example that we made up earlier on, using that dice and the kick drum pattern, it doesn't start on the 1, it starts before the 1 or just after. This one starts just before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So the note comes in before. Give it a go. Get some accompaniment ideas down to jam with and make tunes over the top. Might be a beat, you just get a beat going.
A lot of time for me can be working with a drum machine, and you set a tempo, and it's a tempo it can be 120 BPM, it can be 87, it can be 127, and it's almost like a pulse. And from that, for me, things happen.
I'll often start with a hook, a bass hook, and I'll just sing over that. But that bass line, I might even play it in octaves and just really start, and then just repeat it over and over again until it feels like it's got an energy, and then I'll sort of know what the energy is, and then I'll add a chord.
Or it might be that you get a loop down, or it could be that you just sit and have some chords and you go, and you just get them looping around.
You play a chord and you sing whatever, or you play a chord sequence, you find a chord sequence, you sing whatever that chord sequence inspires, and you see if the gibberish you're singing kind of comes out with some sort of lyrical idea. And if it does, then maybe you've got your kind of beginning of a chorus or whatever then.
7. Beware of streams of notes. Writing streams of notes can be exactly the right idea, but especially if you're writing vocal melodies or melodies to be played by maybe a wind instrument, it can be difficult because people need to breathe, and sometimes they can feel like they're just going on and on. This is the sort of thing I mean. That sort of thing where it's just going one note after another, and there's no gaps, every note is the same length. Just be careful about that when you're writing tunes. I'm not sure that that is really a tune or whether it's just a list of notes. Having said all that, I do want to say that sometimes waffling can be a brilliant way of generating material. You could play for 5 minutes just playing one note after the other, and just there's one bar that turns out to be really inspiring, and it's that bar that becomes the basis of your piece. So use it as a way of generating material. Great. 8. Phrases. So if you're writing a vocal melody or any kind of classic melody, you're probably writing in phrases. So when humans first started making music, they were probably singing, and they had to breathe, and so they would sing for a while, take a breath, and then sing some more. And we've inherited that kind of structure in the way that we think about tunes. So let's take my example of the stream of notes composition. I could just take one little bit of that and immediately make it start to sound more like phrases. I'm just going to take the first 5 notes and do something with that. Something like that. I've got this da 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 dum da dum. I've mixed the rhythms. I've had some space in there, and it starts to sound perhaps like an idea that you could develop into a tune. 9. Motifs. Writing music is sometimes more about finding the good stuff that you've already made rather than just making new things up. And what you might find is that within your tune, there are little motifs, little slices of music that you can make more things out of. So take our dice tune. Can you see that bit in the box there? I could make a tune just out of those first 5 notes. Or maybe just the first 3. And start just using that tiny little slice to make a whole new tune out of. 10. Balancing new ideas and repetition. Do remember that if you've got a great idea, you'll probably need to repeat it in order for the audience to lodge it in their memory. If you take a song like Rehab by Amy Winehouse, that no, no, no phrase happens several times throughout the song. It doesn't feel repetitive. It's just a hook, which means that she can be creative around that repetition. Or the example that we were using earlier on of Good King Wenceslas, incredibly famous tune. But actually, the first 2 lines are exactly the same. They're just repeated with different words. The same. Then a new line in the middle, and the third one, although it's got the same rhythm. And then the 4th line is sort of half the same. Then a different ending.
I would say to myself, don't be afraid of repetition. Repetition is so important. So I would choose one rhythm, maybe that da-da-da-da-da thing, and then I would just use it I'd maybe use it at least, maybe I'd use it every 2 bars, but I'd probably use it every 4 bars, and I would see when it starts becoming annoying.
So there you go, a balance of some things which are being repeated and some stuff which is new. 11. Remember, you can have leaps in your melodies as well as going up in steps. Our dice tune, great, it's got lots of leaps. It's got this one of a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a leap of a fifth, and then it goes down by a sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whereas the tune that I wrote, which was the sort of stream of notes, was tending to go in stepwise motion. Nothing wrong with that necessarily. It could be that a stepwise motion tune works, but if you're feeling like stuck and your tune feels a bit pedestrian and you're wanting to experiment with it, try putting in leaps, like even a third. There's which is this 1, 2, 3. If you take this famous jazz tune called "In the Mood," that's just thirds. Or Rita Ora in For You, she uses a fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She goes stepwise for the whole verse, and then the chorus does a leap of a fifth up, or a sixth. This example by Mozart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or you could maybe even leap a whole octave. There's plenty of songs that do that. We mentioned one earlier on, Starman. Starman. You might even find that picking an interval and deciding to play with it, say, right, I'm going to play with fourths today, you might start to get completely different melodic ideas that you would never have thought of otherwise. 12. How long is your tune? There's a strange thing about a lot of music, that long pieces often need short ideas, and short pieces often need long tunes. So let's take some examples from classical music where you do find a lot of long pieces with short melodies. The one that we played earlier on, that's from a Mozart symphony, and he uses just that little bite-sized chunk of tune hundreds of times. Same with the Beethoven tune that we've used a lot. That's pretty humble, isn't it? 4-note tune, and yet he spins it out hundreds of really imaginative ways of playing it high, low, different keys, different instruments. So a small idea can go an awful long way. And you also get the opposite. You get Yesterday is probably one of the most famous examples. It's got a tune that is actually over 20 seconds long for a 2-minute tune. 13. Does your melody imply chords? It's strange, but melodies have this kind of secret that you know is there, but it takes a bit of work maybe to uncover.
Sometimes I can hear the chord I'm looking for, I don't know what it is, and I'll find it. Other times it's just playing around and seeing what works, and then maybe I'll come up with something I prefer. It's always just mashing around on the piano, and whatever works, works.
Sometimes I'll come up with a melody first and then work the elements around it, like what will the rhythms be and the harmonies and all that. Or sometimes they come together, the melody with the chordal structure and a lyric. It depends.
Sometimes you can hear chords or sense that a chord is possible with a particular tune. So if we take our melody, the dice melody, I've got a sense that it's going to have quite a few chords, and I've got a sense of where it's most tense. So now I just need to actually work out what these chords are, and hopefully the tune will sort of help me. So I knew that I wanted that to be probably not in C minor, and well, it's B flat, so why don't I just play a chord which has got a B flat in it? Okay, let's just start with B flat. Oh yeah, that's sort of the one that I heard. I'm going to play that. Where shall I go next? No, I don't want to go there. I could do, but I'd rather go here. Yeah. And what am I going to do for that one? That's got an E flat, but I've just played an E flat. Maybe, what else has got an E flat in it? C minor? Maybe I'll try that. Okay, let's see if that works. And then I wanted that one to be tense, didn't I? tense. So I need a tense chord with an F in it. In the key of C minor. Well, I happen to know that a G7 would work, so let's give it a go. And you proceed like that. And so on. And I've made this sort of twinkly, slightly romantic, mournful, sad tune. But the point that I want to draw your attention to is that by finding the chords that sort of wanted to go with my tune, it gave me an atmosphere. I could now start to see, okay, what counter melody do I want to make? What melody do I want to follow this? Maybe I'd go da da dum da da, all this sad song da 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 dum. Da 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 da, develop it. Da 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 da. But it's the chords that have taken me there. So it's a great way of sort of stabilizing your music, giving it a frame and giving it a vibe. 14, maybe your chord sequence is your melody. So here's an example by Bach where he's got this sort of pattern. Basically just a series of chords broken into little riffs. What he's done is he's just got this one thing that goes diddle daddle daddle daddle, this same waggly sort of motif, but he takes it through tons of chords. I think there's 30 chord changes or something in this piece. Interesting, but it's actually a catchy motif, even though it is actually quite hard to sing that because it's got that big leap. It's very catchy and it gets in your head. You could do the same thing with an arpeggiator of a synth. I could be holding down similar chords to the Bach, maybe, like. This could be a number of things. I mean, technically speaking, a drum pattern going is not a melody, but it is a piece of catchy material, and you might want to use it in the similar ways that you would use a melody.
Yeah, musical material is not always the starting point for when you're writing. You can use the sounds you hear. So, you know, from, well, anywhere from nature, from, I don't know, walking on a crunchy surface, you know. You don't have to start with the actual notation.
You can write tunes where the melody is singable and it's something clearly recognisable, which I do in some of my work. In other areas of my work, it's more taking field recording. So, for example, a field recording is going out into the street and recording sirens or a traffic light going off or someone walking. You can take those elements and make it into a tune, whether through sampling or just editing it and manipulating it and stretching it out. I did recently a tune where I took a Marvin Gaye tune and I reversed it, stretched out and put it in reverb, and that became like the sound world.
In another example, you might have maybe a beat and an accompaniment pattern, and at a particular point in your song or in your film score, this big sound comes. Hasn't even got a pitch, but it happens at a certain moment, and it's sort of catchy, it's memorable, and you can use it in similar ways. You could make it, you know, you could make it higher or lower, you could double the length of it, half the length of it, you could do all the kinds of things that you would do with a melody and develop it in the same way. So there you go. That's 15 things to get you started when you're trying to invent tunes in the first place. If you're interested in developing your tunes, and I think you will be interested in developing your tunes, you should check out our videos called 28 Things You Can Do With a Tune, which is more about once you've made something up, what you then do with it. And you'll find a link below.